Hey crafty friends, it's Joy here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am sharing Spellbinders Club Kits for February 2024. The kits that I work with are the BetterPress, the Glimmer Hot Foil, the 3D Embossing folder, and the new Stencil of the Month Club. So those are the ones that I'm using, and I'm going to be making 5 cards today. This is the stencil for February 2024. There's 4 stencils in here. You have one that has like a little mask, and they're all fun and beautiful. And these are A2 size, so those are the size of cards that these will fit. I am going to start with my first, well, I've got 2 backgrounds that I'm going to be doing, so I want these to dry first. The first one is going to be from the stencil, and I'm going to use some Distress Crackle paste. I think it's so pretty, and I thought it would really show well through this particular stencil. So I have it in place. I'm just using some tape to adhere it to my A2 size card piece or card base. I am using watercolor cardstock for this because we will be adding watercolor to this later. So I want to spread a thin layer of the Distress Crackle paste over this whole stencil, and then when I'm done I will wash it quickly because you don't want it to dry on here. As this starts to dry, you're going to get some really beautiful crackle, this beautiful crackle effect. This one, I'm going to do 2 cards that are going to have the crackle effect. This one you'll notice when I show you further into the video, it's going to have bigger crackles than the other one that I do. And it's because this layer, even though it's thin, it's going to be a bit thicker than the next one that I'm going to do. So this one is through the stencil, and I think it's pretty even without any color to it. I just think the paste is beautiful, but look how pretty that stencil is. This one is just on a piece of regular cardstock. I'm going to spread it over the whole background. So this is super thin. So depending on how thick or how thin you use the crackle paste is going to be how big or small the cracks are. We're going to put that aside to dry. Let's start using the BetterPress system. This is a beautiful stamp. This is a metal stamp. It also does emboss slightly, so you do get a little bit, if you ran your finger over it, you could kind of feel the indent just a little bit. I'm inking it up with the black ink that is for the BetterPress system, and I'm also using the cotton cardstock. This is in porcelain. That is also made for the BetterPress system. This is a magnet board, and I am lining up my image and my sentiment. This sentiment says, "Wishing you a lovely day." You put your lid on, you run this through the die cut machine. When you put the lid on, it attaches on the 4 corners by magnets. Then you lift it up, and look at how stunning that is. My original idea for this card was that I was going to color these images, but I actually opted not to. I thought that it was so beautiful just with the black and white. Now I'm going to take the other sentiment from the BetterPress kit of the month along with that hummingbird. The hummingbird does have a coordinating die, but I am not going to be using that. This is just a 1-layer card. Then I'm centering my cardstock in the A2 size panel, and then as you can see on the plate itself, that also has an A2 size panel, so it helps you to line up your images. Inking all of that again with my black BetterPress ink. Then I'm going to put this plate on top, and when you run it through the die cut machine, it smushes it down because it's actually kind of hovering above your cardstock. I just need to run it through one time, and then when we lift it up, we have this beautiful image. I'm going to add some color by using scrapbook.com's Floral Smooth cardstock, and I'm just going to add a really thin mat behind this card panel. I did trim them down smaller than an A2 size. I trimmed them down, I don't know, about 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more on each side. And then I will adhere this to a white A2 size card base. But I just think these are so elegant. That first one is my favorite. I feel like that image, you could pair that with a bridal sentiment, a wedding sentiment, and I think it would just be absolutely perfect for wedding stationery. I just think it's so simple. And even when my son saw it, he said, "Ooh, I love that black and white." He's like, "That looks really, really nice." Okay, let's go on to our next card. We'll take a look at all of these up close at the end of the video. This is the piece of of cardstock that we added that crackle layer to. Now it's completely dry. So this is not the one that we used with the stencil. This was just completely on the background. I'm using the 3D embossing folder of the month, running it through the die cut machine, and now we have this beautiful embossed image, and you can see all these little tiny crackles, and I love it. I trimmed it down. I did not want the full piece. And then we're going to do some ink blending. I feel like this really brings out the crackle. I'm using Simon Says Stamps Heather and Lilac for the background of this card. And then we're going to use some acrylic paints, some distress paints, some mermaid sparkle paint, and we're going to really highlight these images that are on the background. I love those two colors together. I think it's super, super pretty. And I'm using a small blender brush. You could use a big one, but this is what was on my desk. There's no real reason to use small or big. I think either one works just fine. I'm going to clean up my work surface so I don't transfer any ink to something I don't want. I am starting with Sparks Mermaid Sparkle. I'm just finger painting today, and I feel like I have more control over how much is going on my image because I really want to be careful to not blob it. So I'm dipping my finger in, I'm tapping the excess off onto my work surface, and then I'm adding a little bit to the raised areas on the Easter eggs. So this color is just for the Easter eggs. Then I'm going to use some white acrylic paint, and I want to add this to some of the flowers. I'm going to use it on the larger flowers and also on the bows. And what I'm noticing is each time I put a layer of this on, I can see more and more of the crackle. It kind of helps reveal that, and I think it's so, so pretty. So again, I do not have a lot of product on my finger. I would rather not have too much and add more than have too much to begin with. Something I did notice, going from the acrylic paint, just like your regular craft store paint, to the Distress Oxide paint, the Distress Oxide paint is much thinner. So when I did my first little flower there, I did blob it too much. You need even less of the Distress Oxide paint to get good coverage. So now I am coloring those little pink flowers. Then I'm using pistachio. That was Kitsch Flamingo Distress paint. I'm using cracked pistachio for the stems and the leaves. I'm trying to really be careful to not get it on the background, but I kind of made a little boo-boo there, but I'm not overly worried about it. It is a handmade card and it does not look horrible. So no need to redo. So again, just using my finger because I think you can feel where the bumps are. Some people might like to use a little tiny paintbrush. I feel like that would take a really long time, but it would look beautiful. So I am for just kind of like the quicker, easier. I will adhere this to a white A2 size card panel. I am going to pop it up with some foam tape. And I had a leftover sentiment from a previous project on my desk. It says, "You're the best." It was from a Honeybee Stamps project. So I'm just going to pop that on here for this card, and it totally works. So I'll adhere that to the top here. And that sentiment also has some foam adhesive behind it, and I'm going to put that in that white space there at the bottom. And then I'm going to add a few, oh gosh, which ones are these? I think these are the pastel confetti from Studio Katya, and I thought it went perfect with the color of this card. So I'm going to have a few of those scattered around, and I will adhere it with my Barely Art glue as soon as I can get it unclogged. And then use my embellishment wand to put those in place. All right, let's move on to our next card. So our stenciled card with our crackle paste is now dry. I am using Altenews half pan of watercolor paints. And so what I'm doing here is I am spraying this cardstock. Remember, this is Bristol Smooth Watercolor cardstock. I am spritzing it with my Distress sprayer. What I wanted to happen is when I dot the color from my paintbrush on the background, I wanted it to just spread because there's water. I wanted that water to grab it and for it to spread around and kind of go where it wanted to go. I didn't want to have to force it in every area. I just wanted that to take that color. So I am using a pink, a teal, and a purple on this background. I do want them to mix a little bit, so I'm just kind of adding it to some of the areas where previous color is, adding it to new areas, and then if it's not wet enough, I spritz it a little bit more. This paper was soaking wet when I was done, so it really needed to sit and dry, and I did take my heat gun to the back of it, not the top of it, and not for a really long time, just to get some of the rest of the water out when I was ready to start working with it. But I just think this is where you can see all of the big crackles from that crackle paste, and I think it turned out so pretty. While that's drying, let's work on our Glimmer Hot Foil Kit of the month. This is beautiful. I thought I'm going to use this really pretty peacock cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. I think this cardstock is so stunning. It's one of my favorite ones. And the foil that comes with it, I think, is the champagne foil that came with the kit. And so I'm going to tape my Glimmer plate down. It is hanging off. This is going to be a mini slimline card base. This measures 6 inches by, or 6 1/4 by 3 1/4 inches, I think is what I trimmed it to. I'm going to trim the excess of that foil off and then place this down. My foil machine is heated. I can push that button. Once that stops blinking, which is, I think it blinks for about a minute, then I can pull it out of the docking station, put my plates on top for my Glimmer hot foil system, run this through my Platinum 6 die cut machine, and I am going to run it through forward and back, and I do run it pretty slow, but you know, the video's sped up so it looks quicker. And then I can bring this over, and we got a beautiful foiled image. I love it. I just want just the foil against that beautiful peacock background. I think it's so, so pretty. Look at that. Oh, it's stunning. Okay, so then we have our sentiment that comes, I think there was a few sentiments, or there was a couple sentiments. I think there was 2. And there's coordinating dies in, excuse me, the Glimmer Hot Foil Kit system. I'm doing the one that says Sending Easter Blessings. So I'm going to do the same thing, add my foil. The pretty side of the foil should face your Glimmer plate. I'm going to do the same thing of running it through my die cut machine, and then I will use the coordinating die to die cut out the sentiment. And this is a really long sentiment, and it would have fit across my card panel, but I wanted to do something different. I loved how long the Glimmer hot foil image is, which is what inspired me to make a mini slimline card base. And I kind of want to keep going with that longer theme, so I want to do that with my sentiment. So I'm going to, of course, pop it up with foam tape, because I don't know that I wouldn't be me if I didn't pop it up with foam tape. And I'm going to put it in place. I actually did trim this down a little bit more, and off camera, I did slide that sentiment inward just a little bit. I'm using more of that scrapbook.com floral smooth cardstock to add a little pink behind it as a matte. And then the slimline card base measures 6 1/2 by 3 1/2. I want to use one of these other stencils from our stencil of the month, and I'm just going to use a little bit. I think I used I can't remember now. I think that's the Heather, and I'm going to lightly ink blend the background. It's just super soft. I did not want it to be dark. This is going to be a background for the other stencil card, so I didn't want to overdo, because that watercolor and that crackle paste are so stunning. I did, however, decide to add a white matte between those 2 stenciled pieces. So I'm going to make that just slightly bigger than our painted background here. So I'm going to adhere this to my white matte here. And then I thought it would be nice to have these 2 pieces here popped up with foam tape against that other stenciled background that we just created. I'm just trying to get everything centered nicely. I think my cardstock was still just the tiniest bit wet, but it dried nicely and it didn't act funny or anything. So here's the foam tape. Let's put this in the center, and all of my cards are on white card bases. Let's pop that in the center. Then I'm going to use Simon Says Stamp's Happy Hello stamp set for the sentiment here. I'm going to stamp it in black ink using my Misty, and it's going to say, "Consider this a paper hug," which I thought is perfect. It's a cute little sentiment. And you know, our cards are paper hugs, which is really nice. I'm going to use my paper trimmer to trim this down. I'm pretty sure there's coordinating dies for this. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't have them if they do have it. So I'm just going to use my paper trimmer. I like to line it up nice and straight on 2 of the edges of paper in my MISTI when I go to stamp it, and then I can just trim it out super easy. Of course, let's pop this up with some foam tape. All the foam tape I used here is from scrapbook.com, their thick stuff and their thinner stuff. And then I'm going to center this right in the card panel. I thought I was going to use Trinity Stamps, or excuse me, Studio Katya's pastel confetti, but I ended up using the gold foil confetti on this. I felt like it needed to pop a little bit more on this card. And then when I'm done here, we can take a look at all of these up close and see how beautiful they are. Look at that crackle paste through that stencil and that fun watercolor background. I love how that turned out. The Glimmer foil card is just pretty and elegant. Then we have our 3D embossing folder card. I love all of those images on there. And then I think this one's my favorite. This is the BetterPress system kit, and we created 2 cards with that. Thank you guys so very much for stopping by and watching. I hope that you feel inspired by this video. I hope that you enjoyed the projects that I created. I appreciate all of your support. Thank you so much for always watching and for commenting. And I hope you guys have a really wonderful day.